while talking to you, Neil, what I have figured out that why you are talking always about the human experience, because you have involved psychology a lot as well, right? So, what was your journey that led you towards human experience and made you stuck towards it? Like, how did you? When did you think of this phrase, or how did it come to you?
I think it came to me pretty early. No, I just, you know what? I think there's been a lot of influences for me, and and maybe I'll go a little deeper into your first question you asked me. So I started my career in contact centers.
Right.
I started on the phones. I was selling long distance to businesses, and I hated my job. I really hated it. There were so many aspects to it that were wrong. How we were rewarded and recognized and compensated was through manipulation of the product and service. It was not a fulfilling job. I did not feel good at the end of the day. So I was very encouraged, motivated to get off the phones. I think after 2 weeks, I was the last person standing from my training class. The others all either quit or got fired. I was still there after 2 weeks only. So I was very motivated to get promoted. I stayed. This is back in the day, where people did this kind of thing. I stayed extra hours to learn what the leaders were doing and the trainers were doing, and I got promoted, and I kept getting promoted and promoted until I was overseeing, thousands of agents across multiple contact centers.
Wow.
Um, um, and I'll tell you actually something else, which I actually don't reflect upon often enough. But in that early part of my leadership career, I had two different bosses. One who was very tyrannical, dictator kind of person, and got results. I'm not going to say there weren't results there, which is where I think this can be very confusing for people. He got results. You fell in line to his way, and he got results. And but you didn't have any ability to bring your own anything into it. It certainly wasn't human experience led. It was hit this goal or you don't have a job. And I thought it was not maybe explicit, but that was the message. And so it was a very high turnover environment. This was a constant hiring environment.
Right.
But you know what? The company got really good at getting people hired, trained, on the phone, scripted, converting sales at immense cost, let alone the impact, which I would reflect on later, we were having on our employees and how they carried that home to their families and to their friends and to the ripple effect of that, which I can get into later, but that's a huge part of why I do this. And then I had a really great boss later in my career who was like the polar opposite and also got great results and actually got better results. And I learned that you could get the results and even better results by being kind and compassionate and by being inclusive and collaborative and flexible and authentic. So I had a great mentor, I would say, there. But my role sort of continued to progress to the point where I was leading service strategy globally. I started to work with my fellow executives because one of the things that came out of that work was, hey, things that are happening in customer service are often symptomatic of something elsewhere in this customer journey. This is before we even use the term customer journey or customer experience for that matter. But just what was happening in legal with a policy that made something fail for a customer? What was happening in marketing that made them not understand this was a nuisance to a customer or confusing? What made it happen in the illustrator who drew the instructions, who never saw a customer use the instructions? What were all those things happening in that experience for a customer that were manifesting in complaints or calls or questions? So that work was really cool and interesting because it made me think deeper about, why do we react this way? Why do customers react this way? Why do employees get frustrated when they're not empowered? Why is this happening? And then I switched at that point into consulting. I kept digging deeper, doing the 5 whys, maybe 10 whys, maybe 100 whys. Why does this keep happening? And the work kind of evolved into, hey, you know what? Great CX outcomes are often hampered because there is really not enough thought and design put into the employee experience. And how do you design that experience specific to a CX outcome, right? So if you give an employee a tool, you bought a CRM platform for your service team or for your marketing to do outbound emails, but did you architect it specifically to deliver an outcome that you were trying to achieve? Not just not like, hey, this is a great hammer, it will help you hammer, so cool, I can hammer now, but which nail and when, like those kinds of questions. And so my work evolved into the employee experience, but then I kept going, why do people still failing? If you design this employee experience to CX outcomes, why does it still fail? And what I finally got to, and not in no small part due to the fact that I'm married to a psychotherapist who also has a master's in organizational psychology, who has taught me a great deal. But what I really came down to is because we are failing at understanding these basic human needs. I'll work with a company. How do you empower employees to do what's right by the customer? Oh, well, we have an empowerment matrix. Well, what does that mean? Well, if a customer says this, you can give them $10. And if a customer says this, you can give them this. I'm like, what does empowerment mean to you? Because empowerment implies I get to bring my knowledge to bear and my experience and my judgment to bear. And I get to make decisions about how best to deal with a situation. And what you've done is you could automate what you've done. You can put it into, if A, then B, if C, then D. That's not empowerment. That is not decision making. So then again, if you dig deeper into that, well, why is that so frustrating for employees, let alone customers? Because it means you don't respect my judgment. It means you don't value my experience. And this happens a lot in companies, especially in customer-facing roles. You don't value my life experience. You just value the training you've given me and where I live in your organization. But, back in my last career, I ran my own company.
Right.
I learned a ton. You don't value any of that. I've had an interesting life. You don't value that. I can understand the caller on the other end of the line who's taking care of their dying parent. You can't understand that. I can, because I've lived it. And how do you trust me, respect me, see me, and value that? How do you hear and really listen and learn about who I am and bring that to bear in your design of your employee journey and customer journey? So I use this thing about empowerment because it cracks me up every time. Show me how you empower your employees. Here's our empowerment guide. That is not empowerment. And it does not fulfill the human need on the employee side. But guess what? It's definitely not going to fulfill the customer experience, because you've taken what needs to be ambiguous and unique and tailored to each experience, and you've made it a cookie cutter that will never fit every experience for that customer either. So they're not going to get a good experience. Anyways,
No, that's a very good thought. So I have another question that I just came to mind. So once we talk about employees behaving like humans and handling the customers when the front facing employees, right? So that is possible, right? If what you need to tell that if you hire a person who is hot headed anyway, we don't know that he'll be the perfect person for the job. But if you train them a little bit, then it is possible. But how about the experiences where front end employees are not there? How do you humanize those? Let's suppose there is a product which is a DIY, right? How do you humanize that way? Like a CRM, like you mentioned about a CRM, it's a product. Now, how does a product team humanize that experience so that the other person feels like that? Because it's also an interaction, right? Interaction with the product is also an interaction where a human is not involved actually. So how do you humanize that part of experience, Neal?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it?
You have to, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's always going to come back to this hierarchy of needs, right? So let's say, for example, I I purchase an appliance in my house, and it's smoking. Smoke is coming up from this appliance. And this doesn't necessarily have to do with anything with human interaction. It may result in a human interaction. It's very possible. But this could just be, you know, at this point in time, as a human being, some things are put in jeopardy. My safety is put in jeopardy. My family's safety might be put in jeopardy. My shelter could light on fire, could be put in jeopardy. The health of my family, is the smoke toxic, can be put in jeopardy. Right. Maybe that appliance is critical to something that I do. Maybe it's my oven. How do I, you know, even the simplicities of creating a meal for my family is put in jeopardy. Right. This is no small thing, right? Am I going to then go on to a system to get a warranty, to get a replacement, to get a repair person, what's that system going to look like? Is this a company that believes that all their customers are out to fraudulently get a warranty covered, in which case they make it really hard to figure out, where do I go? Like, where do I get this? Is there a form on the website I'm supposed to fill? I can't find it. Or I fill out the form, how long do I have to wait? Or I fill out the form and then I get an email from the CRM journey, perhaps, that you know is selling me something else, or completely separate of that. Right. The CRM marketing journey has no visibility that I submitted this warranty claim. So the CRM marketing journey and the service journey aren't connected, right? So I get this email saying, "Hey, how's that dishwasher going? We have a fridge to sell you." Are you kidding me? My dishwasher just exploded. Why are you emailing me this stupid email right now? Right. But again, this is not a small thing. This is like, again, my safety, my security, my stability. Meanwhile, 2 days have gone by. I've got this thing sitting on my driveway now because I'm scared of it. I don't have a dishwasher or an oven or whatever, you know. Now I'm calling. So now there was no human experience built into the self-serve stuff. And now I'm calling, and then that agent has an empowerment matrix. Oh, how long have you owned that dishwasher? I'm sorry, it's past 6 months. Your house is on fire. It's out of my hands, you know. So, you know, so the entire experience. I'm laughing, but these things actually happen. And the entire experience from, you know, but if you take that, let's go back for a second. Let's paint a different picture. I'm a company that understands that I'm a builder of appliances, and I understand that my appliances allow for the smooth functioning of a household, and peace of mind for my customers. They enable. Think about this. I make fridges and ovens. Well, what does that mean? It means that I get to be part of those special memories and moments where families come together and have a meal and share their day. Right. I get to be part of the kid begging their parent for the popsicle they can't have. I get to be part of that young kid who decides they want to start cooking and turn the oven on, and their parents, you know, oh my God, you're going to burn the house down. I get to be part of really magical moments. So if I can think about how I play a role from a purpose perspective in my customers' lives, and then start there, like, what's my purpose? Maybe I want to help families, you know, live their best moments and have memories that aren't tarnished by smoke coming out and a shitty warranty system, you know, or a 17 menu IVR to get to an agent when it broke. You know, maybe I want to be part of those memories that are unfettered by those terrible experiences. And so that then filters down into, I want to hire people who are compassionate, or at least train, if I can, a degree of compassion. I want to give those people room to make judgment calls, I want to make sure that when they make an exception that I maybe hadn't planned and maybe cost us a lot of money, I don't come and hammer them with a performance management plan, but instead I say, listen, guys, Neal killed it today. He offered the customer an entirely new fridge. They had a 25-year-old fridge, and he felt bad, and he offered here's the story. Here's what the customer was saying. He heard their baby crying, whatever. He offered a new fridge. I want to celebrate Neal's decision. His intentions were amazing. Even if I'm going to say we don't want to give a new fridge in those cases, and here's why: because at the end of the day, maybe this isn't the right transaction. But we need more Neals to have the courage to try. Neal and everybody, what can we learn from this? How can we take Neal's courage and apply it in a way that makes more business, whatever the case may be, right? But not the opposite, which is hammering Neal. So this purpose leads to who we hire, to how we train, to what's on our scorecards, to what we celebrate, to what stories we share, to what decisions we make in our capital budget discussions and our project discussions, because they have to serve up to this idea that we are helping families live these incredible moments, and we're part of those moments. We're not an obstruction to those moments. We're a contributor. It changes everything. It changes everything. So I don't even remember the question, but that's my answer.
That's okay. I think it was a really great answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, like, if I would say that is experience and emotions are the currency of human experience, would that be right to say?
Yeah, I mean, emotions are really critical. I mean, when I do any customer experience or employee experience design, it actually almost always starts with the question, what do you think somebody is feeling in this moment of the journey? What feelings are you trying to avoid? What feelings do you really want to nurture, and what would be the ideal feelings that you think they have and emotions that they think they have at the end? So I mean, it's a great place to start. It's still not deep enough because sometimes, like I said, feelings are transactional and feelings are misleading. Again, having a wife who's a psychotherapist, well, the customer's feeling angry. Okay, but that isn't necessarily the root. They're yelling at our customer service agents. Okay, but why? Maybe they had a feeling beneath the anger could be a feeling of lack of control. They just went through 37 IVR menus and they were on hold for 45 minutes. They have no control over this situation. No one wakes up in the morning and says, oh, I have a problem with my product. I cannot wait to call. I'm so excited about my opportunity to call. I know it's going to be amazing. No one wakes up and says that. So they're already predisposed, right? So when we think about those emotions, we also have to go deep enough to understand how do we get to the underlying emotion or the underlying issue that was created. Not having control, customers feeling shame. Some customers don't want to call and don't want to ask for a refund. They're embarrassed about it, which is why many won't even do it. Between that and expecting a terrible experience and or expecting to be judged, they won't. But when they do, sometimes that manifests in anger. So anyways, that's just to say you have to go deep. But you start there. You start with what are they probably feeling? What do you not want them to feel? What do you want them to feel? And then you look at your process and say, is this going to avoid that feeling? Is this going to create that feeling? I don't know. So then what would? And being so honest, like, again, I know a lot of people are like, oh, we just launched that. I spent the last 6 months of my life doing that. And now you're saying it's not good. Be honest, be real. Maybe it wasn't. We missed. It was a misfire. Now we know. We have evidence. That's so good. Now we can move on. So anyways, I agree with your point, NK. Yeah, emotions are at the root of it.
Absolutely. So I think this with so when we talk about human experience, it's more on a human to human touch. So it's easier for us to deliver, right? As it very much related with your frontline customers, specifically in the hospitality and airlines or car rental business, where it's more on the emotions, right? It's more on the higher on the emotion side. But as the thought process is changing during this pandemic and going on also, where human connections are not that, like, it's not so easy to get the human connection. It's good we have a virtual conference, and we can still have some FaceTime. But how do you see that, like, or technology experience versus human experience? Are we going to go to that route, like, where the AI can help, or, like, do a bit more than the human experience as a touch?
I mean, I think AI and machine learning are huge.
Yeah.
Uh, and my gosh, the advances in the last year or two alone. I mean, AI and machine learning has been around for a long time,
Right.
and truthfully was, just unreliable for many of these use cases for many years, and it's changing. Look, I think at the end of the day, I think one of the greatest places for machine learning or AI is anticipatory type activities, right? So how do you get ahead of an issue? How do you look at trends and behaviors and do something that is personalized to a customer before they maybe even think about it? How do you tailor, your offers to be so relevant? But then if you want to go even deeper, how do you tailor those offers to be so relevant, and connected to still some of those basic human needs? So how do you tie that together? I don't know that we're ever going to reach a time. God, I don't even know if I want to reach a time where there's a full, transplant of trying to create human connectedness through machines. I think that they're great again, not to get deep into this data science, but if you really got great VOC data collection and data science, and you can really understand the weighted elements of a customer's interaction with you, what they deem to be critical and important, and what becomes more transactional or trivial, what influences their feelings about you as a brand and their advocacy and purchase, and what they are willing to accept or don't really care that much about. So obviously that's where you start with any kind of, if you're really having an AI interaction, you would start with those. And I mean, who knows if the Terminator will be our concierge in the future? But I definitely think here's what I will say about it: the better it gets, the more burden that puts on organizations to be truly exceptional when you do have a human interaction, because whatever's left after you remove the less important, less urgent, less emotionally connected, less perilous interactions and connections, what you have left is the highest investment moments for customers. And if you have an agent or a retail person or a flight attendant or a baggage handler or whoever whoever that person is interacting with, a bank teller, who is not a high EQ trained, super empowered. These are exceptional transactions that are not the same every day. They will be so varied. So you're not training this. You can't train it. You can give tools and train resourcefulness and give runway for your employees to navigate the organization, to chase down the answers, to make judgment calls, to make a customer feel this is your priority, and your reason for being here is to make this issue their issue. The burden on you becomes enormous. Contact centers have always got a dear place in my heart because it's where I started. Contact centers have fundamentally stayed the same for the past 20, 30 years. I'm not saying technology hasn't changed.
Right.
But when they started, they were run like factories, right? Because 80% of your calls were the same call, and here's the script. This is the problem. Here's the resolution. Go about and do that. I will quality monitor you and make sure you're following those steps. Because when you do, I know I will get a good outcome. That was 30 years ago. All of those transactions are either automated or in the process of being either been removed because the issue itself was removed through product iteration, or this resolution of which has been automated or self-serve. So what am I getting now? What I'm getting now is a huge variety where the customer is more emotionally invested. The complexity is higher. It may be harder to solve. There may not be a clear answer. So that means you can't run it like a factory anymore. You have to hire a different person who has a higher skill set, who needs more pay, who needs more tools and resources to use their decision making. And how you monitor for that and score it on a scorecard is way more outcome based, and not as much on the, did you say the customer's name 3 times? Excellent. That should do it. That ought to hit on the human need there. They're going to be a fan for life now because you said their name 3 times. You know what I mean? So yes, the answer to the question, NK, is yes, AI and machine learning can assist in creating a sense of human connection, but for the lesser important things. And the burden then that places is huge. And I don't think companies have transformed fast enough for what's coming to be able to handle that.
Okay. So I think AI and machine learning, there is also one case of being, it's kind of like scripted. I tell you how. So what actually we do, Neil, we work with companies like e-commerce, banking and all, and they have a lot of voice of the customer data apart from phone. So we have not gone into voice to text yet, but they have a lot of text data, like their app reviews or social media, right? And their chatbot messaging and everything. So they have 1-2 million conversations that are happening every month. So we created like machine learning models which can understand that and give them themes and sentiments, right? Using text and sentiment analysis. So that has been working well because it's scripted. Because how it used to happen, they were all manually tagging in Excel sheets. Okay, what this comment says about, right? You are familiar, you are the CX guy. So, but what we trained our machine that if around 10 tags, 10 topics in Excel are getting tagged with similar sentences, you can automatically predict that, right? So that the human intervention is a little bit less. So that's where NLP is really powerful, right? Because it's scripted, everything is scripted there. So now they asked us something different, which we are thinking in a future roadmap. They said, okay, so now you have done this part for us. How about can you predict quality scores as well? And in the quality score, there is a value which is about human connection, right? How can I find that with the machine, right? If the things are not scripted, I cannot train the machine to do that. You understand?
Yeah,
so that
listen,
is where it's difficult.
I imagine that we will get to some future. I don't think it's impossible. Where we get to some future where the machine can, through enough historical data, start to really accurately interpret tone and pace and volume of a customer.
Right.
When the agent said this with this tone and this pace, the customer responded in a similar fact. We know that led to a better CSAT score. We know that, I have yet to see anything like that today. I certainly hear some companies touting that ability. I've never seen it successfully, accurately put into practice.
Right.
I think there's a huge, there's actually these 2 business cases around this whole idea of scouring texts and emails, social interactions, and phone interactions, text to speech to text. There's 2 big business cases here, and I think one of them is used more often, but I actually think the other one is more valuable. So the first business case that I see used a lot is, again, in contact centers, is how do we monitor for quality, not necessarily those emotional aspects, but definitely monitor for compliance, regulatory compliance, certainly zero tolerance, things like yelling a customer, employee yelling at a customer or swearing at a customer. With this kind of tool, you can scour 100% of interactions and catch them all, and coach as every time, and let the employee get that feedback every time. It's an interesting business case. People are big contact centers, with tens of thousands of agents, have massive teams of quality monitoring. It's a heavy labor cost. And so I can see there's that business case. We can reduce that or augment that team. And B, that team only ever sampled 1, 2, 3% of calls. And now we can sample 100 or emails, chats, and now we can do 100. It's an interesting business case. And I'm not saying it's one or the other. I'm just saying that's one interesting business case. To me, again, until we get to that stage where the quality of the interaction, the level of connectedness, the EQ skills displayed, which I think humans are still much better at assessing, you're not going to wholesale replace quality. The other business case to me that's so much more interesting is the product iteration, the VOC feedback, right? Because as you said, CRM systems, case ticketing systems have such limitations on what the reasons were for this interaction. And interactions are no longer single interactions. I'm calling and I'm talking or I'm texting, and I got like 5 or 6 different things. And now I start tagging that. Maybe I have a CRM platform. Maybe I'm mining that open texted data of the case notes of the agent. But still it's fallible because the agent is interpreting, right? So doing that scouring of all of that interactions and starting to make associations with, whenever a customer calls about this problem and mentions this competitor and gives us this survey result, we know something's up, but maybe we need to change our product then because this competitor is beating us because of this issue. This is the issue where they keep mentioning the competitor. We can be laser focused on modifying our product, resolve that issue, or make it even add a new feature better than that competitor. But we have this great data insight, and that is way from an ROI perspective. I mean, the quality play is a cost play. But the VOC play is a revenue play, right? It's huge. Like it's so much bigger, and yet most companies are doing it for quality purposes. So, anyways,
I think that VOC play, like you mentioned, so it was completely new for the businesses that we pitched to as well. Because what our vision was in this terms is, if I talk about a person who's actually, Neal, doing that manual tagging. For me and NK, what we think, how can we completely replace that? That's what our vision is, and it will automatically drive better business decisions if that part is done. Because 1 million conversations in a month, even if you have 20 people, you cannot tag all of them.
Yeah, no, it should be replaced. I think tagging and case notes, I think that the place for case notes is more about what actions you took. So I did this, I reached out to that person, I updated that system, but the conversation and the nuance of what happened and what was the solution, that can all be mined. In time as you perfect that system. 100% it can be replaced. I mean, maybe not quite there yet, but it's very complementary at the least. And speaking of a handle time, speaking of a cost play, that VOC play, it actually still does have cost benefits, because if you look at wrap-up time in contact centers and how much time an agent spends typing out their summary of that conversation or tagging those categories, I mean, you can reduce that as well. So that actually is both top and bottom line benefit for sure.
Absolutely.